What's going on, peeps? Welcome back to another one of my videos. So, I'm going to be doing the next episode of Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich, episode 2. So, I did the last one on. This is Wednesday, right? Did the last one on Monday, right? So, this is going to be the next episode of Jeffrey Epstein's wickedness. So, that being said, what I think so far about the man, he's sick. He uses poor, weak young girls that they have no defendants, no parenting, no like how to, I like survive, or it's more like they just don't know how to, carry themselves, but they need someone to take him under their wing, if you get what I mean. Like, and that's the thing about it, because that's what goes on in this generation. Kids, especially, it's not even about young women, young men too. Like, it's a lot of people in this generation that are getting misused, taken for granted. If they have to do this, they have to. Older person will give them yada yada yada. It's just, listen. If you're gonna survive in this world, you're gonna have to know to make the right decisions. Even if you're going through stuff, you gotta know how to get back on your feet and try to rise back up. That's what I would say. But and therefore, let's continue on with the next episode. Follow the money. Be right back.
This is a complete description of the residence desired to be searched, including the curtilage attached thereof. Being the premises occupied or under the control of Jeffrey Epstein, white male, date of birth 1/20/53. That's it. This is your copy. And we're going to include it. I'm going to leave a list of what items to take.
7 months into the case, detectives executed the search warrant at Mr. Epstein's residence.
They opened the doors and went up the winding staircase into his ornate and bizarre world. Pictures of young kids, half naked, nudes everywhere. One of the police officers who saw it said that it was just really weird. Detectives also discovered a very bizarre steam room and massage room set up. They actually found some computers that could remain in the house, but police suspected most of Epstein's computer hard drives, surveillance cameras, and videos had already been taken out of the house.
There was space on the desk where wires were hanging, but there was no computer. At that point, it was fairly clear to us that Mr. Epstein knew that he was under investigation. Epstein had been tipped off. After the search warrant, it was disappointing to realize that Epstein's house had been cleaned up. There were a lot of things that had been removed, but there was still plenty of evidence that was left. I think the most useful thing that we learned was that the victims' accounts, detailed descriptions of Mr. Epstein's home, where rooms were located, the configuration of the home, validated what they had told us. There were memo pads of phone calls that we seized that included contact information for some of the victims and for some of the adult females that had been used to identify and recruit the victims. So that was productive for us as well.
The message pads that were taken from the investigation that the Palm Beach Police Department did, they're very revealing. Individuals who were being called or calling back in to come over for these sexual massages. For example, one has a redaction on it, meaning it was a minor who was calling in, and it says she's wondering if 2:30 is okay. She needs to stay in school. I think I took this case much more seriously than other matters that I've handled, in the sense it was very personal. I do have a daughter, I have children. I met with these victims. It was very personal, the abuse that they suffered. I won't stop until the people who victimize these individuals are held accountable. The age of consent in Florida is 18. It does vary state to state, and in New York, for example, it's 17. But this really isn't a case about consent. The point of these cases is that there was no consent here.
Seven months into the investigation, we were all extremely frustrated at the difficulty of this case. We applied whatever resources were necessary to do the best job to quickly be able to reach the point that we could apply for arrest warrants.
Detectives that I talked to said that they were tiptoeing, they were acting a little cautiously because they knew there'd be blowback, but also they were running into resistance even among their own colleagues. They knew that there were people who would protect any number of the residents on the island. And so to go into a case like this, you had to walk gingerly, you had to make sure that you held your information closely, and you had to be absolutely sure that you were right.
We found that the victims ran the entire gamut, from those that were thankful that we contacted them, others who said that they were in love with Jeffrey Epstein and they were going to get married to Jeffrey Epstein. Some victims that we contacted had gone on to college, who slammed the door in the face of detectives. We were very surprised to learn these criminal activities had gone on for a fairly long period of time, many years prior to the investigation.
My name is Virginia Giuffre. When I was 16, I got a summer job at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach. I was working there as a locker room attendant in the spa area. At the time, I really wanted to become a massage therapist. And not very long into working at Mar-a-Lago, did a English lady come up to me. She introduced herself as Ghislaine Maxwell. She was beautiful, she looked educated, she was nice. She said, "Oh, that's interesting, you're reading a book about massage therapy." And she said, "You know, I actually know this guy who's looking for a traveling masseuse. You know, if you want, you can come by this afternoon after work and you can come meet him." I finished work around 5 and I pull up this huge house, this big mansion, and Ghislaine answers the door. I walk through the door and she's leading me up the staircase. I'm looking around, you know, there's photographs everywhere of important people. I could tell that, you know, this guy has some friends in high places. And then we go into the massage room. And there's this massage bed with a naked man laying on top of it. face down. To me, this is, I guess, walking into a world that I didn't understand, but I guess I'm gonna learn. He then shows me, like, put your lotion here on your hands, and then his feet, his calves, his back. While the massage was going on, they asked me questions about my life. So, who are you? What school do you go to? Tell me about yourself. You know, and that's when I felt like I should open up and tell them, like, how much this opportunity means to me. My home life started out very hard from a very young age. I had been a runaway and lived on the streets. I've been abused. I felt like it was okay to tell them about my past. And then he turned over. They asked me to please take off my clothes. He then started taking off her clothes. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was going to happen if I said no. I didn't know what was going to happen if I screamed. I did what they said. Elin was behind it and touching me. It went from oral sex to get on top. Still to this day, I don't know how it went from something real to something perverted like that so quickly. Afterwards, they said the interview went great. You're going to come back tomorrow. And I did. I was abused plenty of times before Epstein had done what he did to me. I had no self-esteem. I was scared that my life was going to be worthless. I was the perfect victim for them. One thing that Epstein loved me for was that I never really asked too many questions. I escalated up the ladder very quickly with Epstein. I did whatever he needed. You know, put his socks on for him before bed, make sure what he needed sexually happened. I had to serve him all the time. They told me, you're going to do so well, you're going to travel the world, you're going to meet people that you'd never think you'd meet, we're going to put you in circles that you would never even understand. Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell had a great way of normalizing the abuse that was going on. They kind of made it feel like we were in this really deranged family. You know, we would sit back and we would watch movies together, we would go diving together, we would go hiking together, we would go on forerunners together, we would do so many cool activities like that together. They kept saying, we will get you educated, you will become a real massage therapist one day. But under the premise that afterwards, you're back to the abuse. And unfortunately, I didn't see my life getting any better. So I stayed. It was like I am now a slave to these people. And then I was trafficked. I was lent out to all of their friends. They were politicians, they were businessmen, they were powerful people. It made me think that if I had run and caused a ruckus, the police wouldn't have believed me, they wouldn't have done anything about it, and Jeffrey and Ghislaine could have hurt me really bad then. He did say, like, people owe me favors. I can get away with this. I will never get caught. I own the Palm Beach Police Department.
Jeffrey Epstein fits into that pattern of thinking that he's above the law, that he can do what he feels like doing. But the life of privilege and power that Epstein led is a far, far cry from the way he was brought up. Epstein was born and raised in Coney Island, New York, which is very middle class, lower middle class. Epstein was a very good student in high school, was a bright guy. He skipped a couple of grades in high school, graduated in 1969.
What college did you attend? Cooper Union. And did you get a degree from Cooper Union also? How many years were you in college?
I believe 2.
What'd you study?
Physics.
But isn't it true that you were a teacher at the Dalton School in New York after college?
The first mystery is, how could Epstein get a job teaching at Dalton without a college degree? This was probably the start of Epstein's lifelong pattern of getting away with things that most people can't.
In 1976, Ace Greenberg was running Bear Stearns. One day, I was sitting in my office, and Ace Greenberg called me to say that a trustee of the Dalton School had a young professor, Jeff Epstein, who wanted to come to Wall Street, and Ace asked if I would interview him. Epstein was well known as a good teacher and somewhat of the ladies' man, which didn't resonate at the time. After grilling Jeffrey a few times, I hired him to develop and market our quantitative analyses for options. He was terrific at it. Epstein was very quick-witted. When something arose that he might not have been able to predict, he dealt with it in an impressive fashion. That's a trait of an effective salesperson. I was favorably impressed that he could do the work, but this, I think, was one of my important states in my career. Epstein had been working for me perhaps 2 months. The head of personnel called me. He said, "Are you sitting down?" Jeffrey Epstein lied on his resume about his education. None of his colleges had ever heard of him. I was stuck. I hired a liar. Even worse, he was dating Ace's daughter. I went to Ace Greenberg. I wasn't sure how he would want me to proceed. And Ace said, "Treat him like anybody else." I was prepared to fire him. And this is where his sales skills really resonated. When I told him he lied, he admitted it immediately. He just said, "I knew I couldn't get a job teaching in a high-quality school if I didn't have good educational credentials. So I wanted to get a chance." I said, "Why didn't you tell us the truth?" He said, "Well, I was afraid the Dalton School would hear about it and there would be problems." He said, "I wanted to." And he did it in a way that was very convincing. He disarmed me. And I thought, do I want to play God and throw him in the street? Maybe destroy his potential? Today I wish I had. He had done well enough that they made him a limited partner. But then a few years after that, I heard he'd been fired for breaking some rules. I deeply regret giving Epstein a second chance. That was my tragedy.
Most of the victims did not want to prosecute when we first contacted them. So once we had 4 or 5 victims who were cooperative, we presented applications for arrest warrants to the state attorney's office. From the time I first became police chief, I had an excellent relationship with the state attorney, very Christian. The first time that I talked about the case against Epstein with him, I explained that we had about 40-some victims who were in their teens, early teens in some cases, who had sex with an adult male in his 50s, saying didn't know Jeffrey Epstein, and he remarked, "We'll put him away for the rest of his life. This will be an easy case."
Jeffrey Epstein, both through his money and his connections, was able to assemble an extraordinary dream team of at least 8 defense lawyers who were known throughout the country and throughout their industry as the absolute best. Including impeachment lawyer Kenneth Starr, the top defense lawyers of South Florida, people like Roy Black, New Yorkers like Jay Lefkowitz and Gerald Lefcourt, to Harvard Law School professor Anthony Dershowitz.
I was born to be a criminal defense lawyer. If you want to be a defense attorney, you can't be concerned about what people think of you. So I did represent closely O.J. Simpson and Mike Tyson and Leona Helmsley and Patricia Hearst and so many other people. My relationship with Jeffrey Epstein was academic and lawyer-like. But it was a close academic friendship. For example, when I would write books, I would only send them to a handful of people. He was one of them because he would seriously read every word I wrote, and he would have comments and criticisms. Jeffrey Epstein called me, I think, the day he got the first indications. And the first indications were merely that one or two of the women may have been 17 and may have lied about their age and given him false documentation. He asked me if I would help represent him, and I said I couldn't represent him myself. I'm not a member of the Florida bar, but that I would help him put together a legal team, and I did.
Detectives quickly learned that Epstein was onto them, and that he was organizing a defense, and in fact, he was organizing an offense. Jeffrey Epstein's attorneys were looking into what the detectives were doing, who they were, what their pasts were, whether there were any peccadillos that would make them vulnerable to attack.
There was surveillance of me for months, around the clock, surveillance of Detective Ricari around the clock, picking up of his trash at his home and my trash. And the reason that it happened to the degree that it did is because Mr. Epstein had the resources to do that. In fact, we found private investigators going through the trash at the police station. So we stopped putting the reports in the computer and actually had them kept separately.
A few months after Chief Michael Ryder hands over the evidence to his close friend, Barry Krischer, Ryder noticed an alarming difference in Krischer's attitude towards Epstein. Krischer had all but said to his friend, Chief Michael Ryder, "We're going to string him up." Looked like he had a really solid case. And then suddenly the teeth seemed to go out of the investigation, at least on the side of the state attorney who was supposed to be prosecuting this.
I had been speaking with Mr. Krischer along the way, and the state attorney's office started saying, look, these victims will not make good witnesses. Yes, these victims, most of them, receive financial compensation for the sexual contact with Mr. Epstein, but no child can consent to have sex with an adult. But we were never able to really convince the prosecutors that that didn't matter.
In a release, high-powered local attorney Jack Goldberger, Epstein's attorney, emphasized the grand jury in this questioned the credibility of the girls and therefore limited their charges simply to solicitation of prostitution. Epstein is out on bond, and he's not talking.
I've been a reporter at Palm Beach Post for about 16 years. I think nobody knew anything until 2006, and then it just exploded. Epstein's attorneys went after the victims viciously. I mean, their depositions that I've read were just, hideous. I remember one where he asked one of the young girls, is it true you've had 3 abortions? And then they asked the girl, well, what's worse, having 3 abortions or giving sexual massages to Jeffrey Epstein? I mean, it was just brutal what they did to these women.
You must bring out all the negatives. You have to present the full picture. Their credibility may be subject to question because of their backgrounds, but it has nothing to do with blaming them. It's the role of the defense attorney to raise questions about the credibility of any witnesses. We don't look at what's good for victims. We don't look at anything except what's good for our client ethically and legally.
I've been here with a TV station here in Palm Beach County for almost 23 years now. Jeffrey Epstein's story is as big as it gets. So when the story broke, we started realizing the gravity of a Palm Beach billionaire and the accusations that we were starting to hear, we were quickly on the air with this story. But Epstein's team wanted this to go away. There were weekly phone calls to reporters with threats to make the story go away. You don't want to do this. You shouldn't be looking into this. And it was mystifying to the Palm Beach Police Department because they had all this evidence.
Palm Beach police think prostitution charges brought against billionaire socialite Jeffrey Epstein don't go far enough. Investigators think prosecutors should have gone after Epstein on charges of unlawful sex with a minor. So why didn't they?
We were all extremely frustrated. Once we knew that one charge was going to be the extent of the state's prosecution, I wrote the parents of all the victims and told them that I did not feel that justice was sufficiently served and that I was referring the case to the FBI.
It's highly unusual for a police chief to sidestep the state attorney's office and go directly to the feds and ask and demand an investigation. I don't know that I've ever heard of that. And I think, that's one of the many, many, many odd things about this case.
Any investigator or investigation, the first thing you're going to do is look back in time and see, has this happened before? Are there other claims? Are there other victims? The FBI actually found 2 women who had accused Epstein a decade earlier, in 1996. Maria Farmer, an artist, and her younger sister Annie.
In 1996, following the assault by Jeffrey and Helen, I came back to New York, and then I found out that they knew that I reported them to the FBI. Helen called and said she was going to burn all my art and burn my career and destroy it. She was entirely socially connected, and that I was screwed. She told me I needed to watch my back, that I know you like to go running on the West Side Highway, and that's not going to be a safe place for you anymore because there are a lot of ways to die on the West Side Highway. From that point on.
Well, let me rewind it. Let me rewind it and hear what she say. Let me see what happened. Let me just rewind it. I think. All right, let me just stop right. Let's go right here.
You're not safe where you are. You might want to check over your shoulder. Finally, in 2006, I was living in the mountains of North Carolina. I was hiding. I had changed my name. I had an alias. And I get a knock on the door, and it's this man and this woman, and they show me their badge, their FBI, and this woman who said, this is about your 1996 FBI report, and we're following up because we're going to get them. We're going to get them. The FBI came and they interviewed me and they interviewed my sister and we told them our stories. And so we just thought, oh my gosh, they're really, they're doing a thorough job. They're looking at people in other places. They're recognizing that this is a more systemic issue, and they are, he's going to be held accountable.
I talked to the FBI and they're like, we're here to save you. And they assured me that they were going to protect me and that they needed me to tell them everything that happened and they would help as many as they can.
I think a lot of the families, when they came to learn what happened to their daughters, reached out to attorneys to try to help them navigate this circumstance, because obviously there was a criminal aspect to it, there was a civil aspect to it, and they were also facing somebody who was incredibly powerful, incredibly wealthy, incredibly intimidating, so they needed lawyers to help them through that process.
That's your fake. Is that boyfriend used favor your ass?
The first time I ever heard Jeffrey Epstein's name was when I had my own law firm dedicated to representing crime victims in civil cases. a friend of mine from Jacksonville, who was also a lawyer, he called me and said that he had received a call from a girl, and that was Courtney Wild. Courtney came to my office. Then she told me how she went into his house, told me what happened there.
I was 14 when I was introduced to Jeffrey Epstein. It was 8th grade summer, going from 8th grade to high school. From 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, I was a straight A student. I never even got a B. I played the trumpet. I was captain of the cheerleading squad. But then from 8th grade to 9th grade, things fell apart for me and my family, just from my mom's addiction. She was sick, battling her own demons, wasn't really able to care for me. And I was basically homeless and living at friends' house and stuff like that. When I first went to Jeffrey's, I really was expecting I was going to make easy money, giving this guy a massage. And that situation escalated to him molesting me. It happened so quick where it's like, what just happened? But being vulnerable at 14 years old and trying to handle life on my own, it was just overwhelming. So I did continue to go back to Jeffrey's. He made me feel like, basically I was lucky to be in his presence. It was just a glorified manipulation thing he had going on that worked.
Okay, I'll pause it right there. I mean, I know I missed like half, but still, when I heard the woman said that she wasn't safe anymore because she told the FBI and the FBI was going to put him away, that's like saying, keep your mouth shut or we will bury you. That's like, man, people like that are like, that's what happens when someone is rich and powerful. That's why I can't stand rich people. Because they get everything they have. Money, like ways to buy off the crimes, bribe some people, and then have ways to just let that all go away. It's just like, it's ridiculous and it's corruptive. And the fact of the matter is that this man, he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew that using these defenseless, weak-minded females was a quick way for him to feel like overpowering. And the crazy thing about it, you know what? I just blame the woman that actually go up to him. If y'all knew that this man was a freaking pervert and a freaking pedophile because he's rich, then y'all still wouldn't have gone to him. Y'all would have another way to make some money. I get it. It's hard. It's hard to, rise when you ain't got nothing. You ain't got no house. You have parents, but they're not doing well with themselves, not taking care of themselves, and they're the way they are, and you're just up with options how are you going to survive without the help of your parents? But the thing is, going to some rich man's house, him having a freaking creepy ass mind and having ways to pretty much use you to do things that he want you to do in order to get like an easy, quick cash. Still, if somebody has a mindset like that, stay away from them. Don't just wait until file a report, because that right there will be like it's too late. You're dealing with a powerful, rich, nasty, pedophile man. So even regardless if you tell to file a report, he's gonna have ways, and he's gonna have ways to make sure that your behind is quiet. If you were smart, I would relocate and change my name.
it was maybe the second time I went to him or the third. He asked me, do I have any friends? Can I bring anybody? And he would give me $200 and the person $200. And my
only thing is, it's like, what's up with these men, these nasty men that prey on young women? That's the thing about it. But then, don't get me wrong, I've seen a lot of men dating young women, not young women dating older men for some purpose. It's either for money or it's just they just got a little thing going on, which I don't understand the process on how you and her stand together. But hey, she's grown, you're grown, but y'all got different mindsets. That's all I have to say on that one.
time frame of going for 3 to 4 years, I at least brought him 40 to 60 girls.
40, 60, dang. So you already know what you're doing. Committing a crime. Prostitutely. You're serving up girls to a pedophile. He's paying you, which means it's a bribe. That's also a crime. Bribery.
I know that this is wrong, this is crazy, but I just became okay with that because of what he offered me. He offered me cash, he offered me a way so I could eat and pay my bills, and he offered me something that nobody else did. I felt like he was my lifeline.
That's the thing I hate about poses. You know what they say? They love what they see on the outside, but not the inside. That's the thing about these nasty creeps that roam around on these streets, cities, states, and also apartments. Because you don't know if that man has a dirty mindset. Plus, girls pretty much. I mean, I'm not saying all women, but I'm just saying women need to understand. If you're gonna be with a man, and if you think that man is gonna be the love of your life, just make sure you know the man really well, and hopefully, you and him have the same toe to toe, eye to eye, y'all have the same commitment, the same perspective, and accept the way y'all is. It don't matter if you're rich or whatsoever, as long as the love is with both, then y'all will have happily ever after. The thing is, if you're being used for something else, then that right there is just, you probably don't even know what you basically want. I get it. You're doing this to get some money, quick cash, but do it the right way, not the wrong way. 2002. Palm Beach, Florida, 2006.
So in the beginning of the investigation, when the police were reaching out to me, I was confused. I felt like I had this painting of Jeffrey that he was this awesome man, that he actually saved my life in a sense, that I was very lucky to ever be introduced to him. But then I see the police reports of girls that I had brought to Jeffrey's, close friends, and that made me have the change of heart. The emotions come over, like guilt and shame and disgust. It was traumatic. That's when I started saying, okay, this isn't right. Something needs to happen about this. So I find Brad Edwards, my attorney.
I told her, you don't really have much to worry about. This is somebody who is not ever going to be free again.
Unfortunately, this man's been dead since 2019, right? Pretty much been dead for almost 2 or 3 years now. So, all I'm saying is, the man is not gonna hurt anybody else ever again. I don't care if they're rich. Men like that needs to be put away for good. Because firstly, me, in my opinion, I'm tired of men like that. Even females walking around here getting a slap off the wrist because of what they are rich. That's what I'm saying. If you gotta go above the record, above the board, then you'll have no choice.
And she said, but I don't think that you understand the level of power he has. It's just unheard of. It's just an unbelievable scheme to have kept going for that long of a period of time. I've never heard anything like this where somebody was able to set up basically a pyramid scheme, a molestation pyramid scheme.
Hey, do you have the victim chart? The chart that we created? This is when we were first trying to map out the case.
We had to prove that this pyramid of underage girls in Palm Beach was true. It didn't start from just a random underage girl walking into the house. Ghislaine Maxwell was one of the recruiters of the underage girls for Jeffrey Epstein. The other recruiters that were identified were Sarah Kellen, Nadia Marcinkova, Adriana Muchenska, and we just started tracking if this person, which name is not identified right now, was an underage girl. Who did you bring? And then from that person, we would break down how many did you bring? And she would name the other 5 or 6 people. This was something that we assembled in about 30 days and realized that this chart could go off like a spider web for 5 times as big as this chart.
It's sad. All those girls on that chart. You know what's so crazy? Those type of women that actually went to Jeffrey's house, they were weak. They didn't have no idea what they were getting themselves into. Sure, runaways, homeless, struggling. The thing is, going to a man that has a nasty, dirty mind, and plus rich. It's just sad to see, go through that path of just disgracefulness. And I get it, but if you're recruiting girls for that man, and then you're going on saying because you were bribed to $200 just to bring somebody in, man.
So the top of the pyramid scheme was Ghislaine Maxwell, who was really Epstein's right-hand person with helping to recruit these individuals for sexual abuse.
That's his right-hand man. Oh man, I could see it. Like I could see the process. Yeah, they're like together. That's why she pretty much threatened that woman's life, saying that you will never be safe ever again. You may look over your shoulder. Man, I mean, she has ways to take someone's life away. Dang. That one right there, she has to be like the nastiest corruptive alongside Jeffrey Epstein.
Jeffrey and Ghislaine met in New York. Jeffrey Epstein's really an introvert. Ghislaine is a much more charming person than Jeffrey is. She's an extrovert. I think he revels in being this man of mystery who almost can't be bothered to dress properly. He can't be bothered to go to restaurants. And he likes the sort of intrigue that creates about him. Ghislaine is a very engaging person. She's extremely charismatic and bubbly. Her father, Robert Maxwell, had been an incredibly big figure in England. He was a big newspaper publisher. In fact, he'd been something of a con man.
and a fraudster, but he lived a huge life. When Ghislaine came to New York, her whole world had fallen apart. Her father, who she was incredibly attached to, had died in very murky circumstances, and also his entire reputation had been shattered. Jeffrey, in a way, felt like a safe haven for her. Here was another very rich man to sort of replace her father.
I've been covering Wall Street since at least 1991. You know, Jeffrey Epstein was always someone whose name popped up, but couldn't really nail it down. He was a cipher. People I know on Wall Street leave trails. His trail was elusive. So it was just sort of odd that here was this guy that people talked about a lot that didn't have much of a footprint in the investment world. That's the mystery of Jeffrey Epstein. You know, how did he make money?
I deeply regret that I met Jeffrey Epstein, who is somebody that has haunted me for over 30 years. Without me, he wouldn't be the billionaire he is today, and these poor girls would not be raped. And I'm here for redemption and to tell the story to the public.
Wolf of Wall Street. Yeah, I watched the movie. But that man pretty much made Jeffrey the way he is.
I met Jeffrey Epstein in the 80s after he was thrown out of Bear Stearns. I was the CEO of Towers Financial Corporation.
Steve Hoffenberg and Jeffrey were both self-made guys, but when Jeffrey met him, Hoffenberg was the mogul. He was the one flying around in private planes. He was the one with the wealth.
The CEO of a very large company who had employed Jeffrey Epstein in Europe called me a brilliant man that we'd like you to interview for North America because he has credentials on Wall Street and he's loaded with energy, but his moral compass is upside down. Jeffrey Epstein had cheated and stolen money on his expense account. He definitely appealed to us because we were running a Ponzi scheme. And he understood Wall Street and he could deliver substantial results in this criminal enterprise. So I interviewed Jeffrey Epstein and he took control of the interview. He's got a gift that's extraordinary where he controls the people he meets and manipulates them totally with his charisma. Jeffrey Epstein became my partner in crime, backing me up, leading the events, doing the crimes alongside me daily. He took over the securities side, the fake asset side. He was manipulating the stock price and trading stock illegally.
People involved certainly remembered Jeffrey as being incredibly important in coming up with how the scheme would work. Then the law caught up to this massive scam.
I stood up, pled guilty, and accepted the responsibility. My sentence was for 20 years in federal prison. And I didn't turn evidence against him because Jeffrey Epstein told me he was a cooperating witness for the United States Department of Justice in the past, and he had traction with I believe that Jeffrey Epstein would have been able to discredit me and say he was the white knight and he was immaculate. And I knew that was his plan. You can't grasp the magnitude of this man's control and the fact Jeffrey Epstein was able to control and manipulate people in an extreme method. That was typical Jeffrey Epstein.
It's very clear that that is Jeffrey's MO, is to hold things over people, hold their secrets over people. I suspect, there's a pattern here.
Jeffrey Epstein's methods started with Leslie Wexner. When Jeffrey Epstein sold his soul to Leslie Wexner for several $7 billion of investment.
Jeff Epstein met Leslie Wexner somewhere around 1986. This is Mr. Wexner's gatehouse. And beyond that gatehouse is a massive compound and the most expensive house in central Ohio.
Les Wexner started out in 1963 opening the women's fashion apparel shop, The Limited. Les bought various other brands, Abercrombie and Fitch and Victoria's Secret. Through all of that, became a multi-billionaire. At some point, Les Wexner provided a power of attorney to Jeffrey Epstein over his financial affairs. I was astonished because Les Wexner is not the kind of guy who gives up control over anything.
Epstein was this Svengali figure that seems to have some unexplainable grip over this titan of industry. There were people in the late 80s, early 90s that referred to Epstein as the boyfriend.
Jeffrey Epstein was working with both of us at the same time. He was going to Ohio regularly on a jet that was provided to Jeffrey by Leslie Wexner. Epstein explained to me personally that he could control the emotions of Leslie Wexner easily because Leslie Wexner was fascinated and Wexner totally adored Epstein.
Do you consider yourself to be bisexual? No. In any event, you did develop a sexual relationship with Leslie Wexner at some point in time. Is that true? No.
Epstein told me how he planned to manipulate and control Leslie Wexner's fortune of billions of dollars so that Jeffrey Epstein could invest and make substantial income.
Say, between 1991 and 2006, Epstein oversaw the sale of more than $1 billion of stock from the Wheeler Company. Man,
In 2019,
this man was
revealed that he
rich.
had ties with Epstein back in 2007. He said he discovered Epstein had stolen more than $46 million from him. He didn't explain why he didn't press charges.
Being taken advantage of by someone who was so sick, so cunning, so depraved, is something that I'm embarrassed that I was even close to.
San Monica, California,
Was it,
1997.
dress? When my friend said, this guy can get you in the Victoria's Secret catalog, I jumped.
And you believe that? That shows you right there. Don't trust anybody.
Jeffrey Epstein was staying at Shutters Hotel in Santa Monica, California. So I met him at his hotel room. He said he knows the owner of Victoria's Secret. So he started opening my portfolio of pictures. And then he said, let me see you in your bra and underwear. Then he started putting his hands on me and my hips and my butt. I really felt at the time that I was going to be raped or attacked. I ran out of the room crying. I drove to the Santa Monica Police Department to file a police report.
And just for the record, I don't even like LAPD officers. Who is this? Hello? Hey. What's up? Piscino. What's up? Yes, it's evening for me. It is evening.
I don't remember him ever being investigated. No one called me.
I'm good. I'm just tired, but I'll be
He didn't
fine.
get in trouble over it. It was like nothing really ever happened.
It's late. Still not sleeping? Nope. Watching something. I'll probably sleep later.
Been a private
How you
investigator
feeling?
now for about 10 years. But I'd say 80% of my job is on the street finding information. When I started working on this case with Brian Edwards, he told me that the FBI is doing a parallel case.
Okay.
But they really don't have
I'm about
much.
to get off because someone
It's
was
just really
talk.
going along slow. I'm a fan of the FBI.
I appreciate you
I've worked
stopping
very
by.
closely with them.
And the hearts.
So I said, well, can maybe I can speed it up for them? I had one daughter at the time when I started working on the case, who was 21, and one daughter was 15.
Yeah, I see it. Yes. I'll be right
It
back.
didn't only make me think
I
about
appreciate
my own
that.
daughters, it made me think about all the years
Sure,
I spent in law enforcement that I had to interview abused girls or girls that were victims of a pedophile and how broken these girls became. These are the girls that I have been able to identify myself that were victims, 13 and 14 and 15 years old. And you see there's a volume of it. I started going to the depressed areas of West Palm Beach to these neighborhoods, and I would meet someone, or one of the girls that Brad was representing would know someone, give me a lead, and that's how I started finding girl after girl after girl. I think I must have found like 46 other girls.
46.
Some of the victims were very reluctant to talk to me, but I was at least able to get their names, who they were, and where they lived, which I later gave to the FBI.
Everybody feared him, and fear was his greatest asset, and that's what gave him his power. So I took it up on myself as a civil prosecutor, and I served Jeffrey Epstein for a deposition and tried to achieve justice for the victims.
Mr. Epstein, how long have you been sexually attracted to underage minor females?
Objection, harassing, argumentative. Are you kidding?
No, I mean, I don't feel like I'm divulging any secrets here, right?
Move to strike.
I was starting to really get on Jeffrey Epstein's nerves, for sure. There's no doubt. Was I trying to? I guess so.
Mr. Epstein, were you sexually abused as a minor? Again? Were you sexually abused as a minor?
You know, I'd like to respond to all your, if any questions seem to be relevant, but I would like to respond to any relevant question at this time. However, my attorneys have counseled me that I cannot provide answers to questions relevant to this lawsuit today. I must accept their advice on this reason, and I Sixth Amendment right to effective representation. Accordingly, then I assert my Fifth 6 and 14th Amendment right to the 6 Constitution.
Pretty soon, Epstein's investigators started conducting surveillance on Brad. They were trying to find out if they could catch Brad doing anything wrong after hours, during hours, and try to blackmail him. But then it became intimidation because they started surveilling Brad's house, where his wife and kids lived.
When my wife noticed that somebody was following her, I thought, okay, this kid's just getting out of hand. And that's now that my family. He tried to intimidate me into just abandoning my clients, which I would never going to do. I would never going to happen.
They were investigating the victims as well. We had several victims report to us that people posing as law enforcement officers were contacting the victims and in some cases intimidating them.
Dang, that's what I mean about corruption. I'm telling you, people like that, powerful people that have ways to make people's life miserable. That's just crazy, man. That's why personally, people like that need to be put down and stopped. Not like put down, they need to be put away. Be stripped.
I started noticing that there were cars that would sit at the end of my street. I had these people constantly watching me. So I called my attorney and I told him what was going on. Brad figured out that most of these vehicles were actually private investigators that were following and watching me.
While she was sleeping in her bed, Jeffrey Epstein's investigators set their car up across the street from her house and just shined their bright lights through her window all night.
That's the thing about private investigators, man. They have ways to make sure wherever you go, they'll go. They'll find what you're doing, or they will use that against you. Whoever they were hired by, they're going to have ways to make sure that they'll give that info to that main person. Then pretty soon later, you try to back up your story and try to get what you want to say, but then they have ways to turn that around, and then boom, you're screwed.
So Brad sent Lake Fisting over. They had this private investigator war, cameras against one another, recording each other.
When I showed up, he was still here. I took pictures of his car, and then I took pictures of him in his car. With me there, looking at him, he's still videotaping.
It was kind of scary. Mike puts me in his car and he says, "We're gonna get out of here."
Don't follow her.
And he drove me hours down south and put me in a hotel where I hid and was basically just told your family's gonna be safer if you're not home because they're not gonna harass you now. Why do I have to make my family safe from somebody who should be sitting in jail?
This was a cooperative investigation between the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office. Although we were not an official partner to the investigation, they kept us informed. We cooperated. We introduced them to the victims that we knew of. We gave them all of the background information. What's written between the lines, it doesn't appear in the report.
The agent on the case, Kirkendall, is a great agent. And she put together this case against this pedophile that was going to put him in prison the rest of his life if he just gets convicted of one count.
The government had a plethora of information at their fingertips. They had 35 to 40 different victims that were willing to give testimony. They had information.
Most of those victims were scared. They were scared to testify because the man he had power. he had a lot of power. He harassed, he threatened them, he needed to make sure that they stayed quiet or else they will get something really bad coming after them. So yes, those victims were scared and terrified of him. But the thing is, they should have known better not to go with the wrong guy, especially a freaking sex offender like that, man.
Victims being transported across state lines, whether it be in private planes or on commercial flights. So they had a 53-page indictment prepared because they had just an immense amount of information that they could charge Epstein.
I asked for appointment with Alex Acosta.
All right, guys, name by Jeffrey Epstein. I keep saying it wrong. Jeffrey Epstein, I meant. Sorry for the mispronunciation.
Alex Acosta at the time was the U.S. attorney. I met with him and his team in Mr. Acosta's office. I told them that I would like to know from them that they were going to prosecute this case and follow through with it and get justice for the victims. I left my meeting with Alex Acosta thinking that Jeffrey Epstein would go to jail for the rest of his life.
Still, you're going to need a lot. You're going to need everything you got to put a man that powerful in jail, because a man that has money, that's rich, wealthy, he definitely has ways to make sure that he stays out. Whether there's any cases against him, he's going to have ways to make sure that goes away. So, like I said before, guys like that are scary, especially with the money and the power and everything they got. They are scary.
The case had been turned over to the federal government for more than 2 years, but I hadn't heard it. I just want to know what's going on. So I call and speak with Maria Viefania of the U.S. Attorney's Office, and she confirmed that this is a massive case. I started asking when she thought a trial was actually going to happen. And I remember her telling me that there's just a lot that I want to tell you. And I know that your heart's in the right place, and mine is too. There's a lot that I want to tell you, Brad, that I can't tell you. And that's when I started thinking something was going on.
Suddenly, when we'd call the FBI agents, they would tell us they were forbidden to talk to any representative of the Palm Beach Police Department about the case. It's the only time that ever happened in my 30 years as a law enforcement officer.
Epstein's personal 727 aircraft arrived at PBIA from Newark at 5 p.m. The investor, traveling with a small entourage, was met at the private Galaxy Aviation by a black Escalade and a driver. Sources tell News Channel 5 that Kenneth Starr, now a top lawyer in Los Angeles, will arrive here tomorrow morning. The U.S. Attorney Acosta met with Jeffrey Epstein's lawyers. The next thing, not only was the indictment gone, the FBI case was stopped. So the FBI agents were shook up, very upset, and started voicing their opposition to what had occurred.
The FBI agent, Nesbitt Kurbendall, I was so impressed by her. She was very dedicated to the women in Florida. She called me really upset one day, and she said, Maria, I know you're hesitant about testifying because you're afraid, and I just want you to know I don't know if it'll even matter because things are really falling apart.
I contacted Kurbendall myself, and she was in tears. She was actually crying on the phone in tears that this happened. She felt so bad for these victims. She told these victims she's going to put this guy away. Nobody knows why U.S. Attorney Acosta shut this case down. To me, that's bullshit.
Alexander Acosta has maintained his actions in the Epstein case were appropriate. Former Palm Beach County Attorney Barry Kushner declined multiple requests for an interview. I can tell you these people were actually bribed. They very much were bribed to just back off. So yeah, that's why the judge backed up, because he must have been bribed. He must have been threatened. Ghislaine Maxwell denies all accusations against her. Wow. That's crazy. That is crazy. So basically, the case was shut down, and they pretty much step aside with no words to say. So I'm guessing the man was powerful. He had ways to get off. That's why most victims like that, they will never feel the same ever again, because they were told a miracle, and it just backfired, and it just came all upon where it's like it's no use. It's going down. So that being said, it was the case that the man had money, he had ways to get off, and he needed to make sure that he was not going to go to jail, regardless of what the victims say or anybody else that had anything to do with the case. He's going to have the ways to get out, because the man is rich. He's wealthy. I guarantee you, if I didn't know about this when he was alive, but the man was a pedophile, man. He used young, troubled females. And those females pretty much recruited so many girls to go and be invited to his house, get paid by doing dirty things. To me, that right there is sick. And for the girls that actually, told them that this was a good way to make money, shame on them. Shame on them. That's why, forever cause, they will never be the same ever again. But this right here, pretty, challenging episode. But the thing is, it kept going. The man pretty much was getting more girls after another. But either way, the man was still sick in the head. Like, for real, man. Like pedophiles. Pedophiles, to me, they need to be put away. For real. That's why personally, me, any pedophile that tries to come near a kid, they need to be put away. Hopefully they rot to the ground. That's what I would say. So, either way, there you have it for this episode of Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich. So, hopefully, you can give any thoughts on this episode and this reaction / review. And I'm about to, call it a night. So, I'm about to close down, and hopefully I'll do more videos real soon. So, until then, See you around.